Name is Jeff. It's West Side Jeff sitting in for Chris Crock tonight. Be back tomorrow night in the next couple weeks as we cover for vacations. Talking about a story, and we just thank you, Chad Green, or Chad, for calling a few minutes ago, a trustee in McKinney, to talk about schools and education. I'm talking about a story I saw earlier this week that in the Dallas News. It said there are several campus closures and staff cuts that are among tough decisions that officials have to face to address shortfalls. There's a lot of things impacting our school systems in the communities in which we live. One of them is, and I was surprised to learn this, still that pandemic era funding is still out there and coming to a close. And so school systems are challenged with that and several other things. So the story was well written, a great story in the Dallas News, talking about challenges that school systems have. As I've been talking about it, I took a call from Chad. He said Chad volunteered. He's a trustee in McKinney and shared with us some really some juicy things, quite honestly. I asked him what are the three biggest problems he deals with in McKinney schools, not just McKinney, but it applies to school systems across all of North Texas. And he said number one is management, so managing the school system. Number two is a woke agenda, and that is more focused on ideology than it is educating students. I agree with that. I see that across school districts across the country. And he said number three, upper management. And I put it in my words, C-suite, administration level, superintendent level are more concerned about protecting their turf at the expense of student education. I asked him for what solutions you have. Okay, we know the problems. So, Chad, you got the ears of many, many parents listening to us across North Texas and across the South here. What are the solutions? And he said, number one, legislation with teeth that removes superintendents or C-suite leaders who break the law, the legislation will actually decommission them and remove their accreditation. He said number two is parents need to get involved in their communities and their schools, know what they're voting on, know who they're voting for to run their school systems and the administration, the trustees, and the municipalities. But also, number three is to visit the school system. I can tell you, my name is Jeff, it's Westside Jeff. As I've gone to my school system for athletic activities, when there's a break and my kid's not participating, I walk the hallways. I've walked every hallway of my daughter's high school. I want to see what's on the bulletin boards. I want to look in the doors of the classrooms and see what I'm seeing. I want to look on lockers. I want to get the vibe. I want to get the feel. I want to get the temperature of the room, the taste of the town of what I'm seeing. And as I've done that, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I'm seeing. It doesn't look like the school that I went to back in the 70s and 80s. It looks like what Chad said is spot on, where woke agendas, that they're more interested in equality than they are education. Now, you and I agree with equality. I want equality of opportunity. They want equality of outcome. You cannot legislate equality of outcome because every student's different. You can legislate equality of opportunity, but not outcome. I personally have talked to 3 teachers in our school system that independently, they don't know each other, and I've not told any of the 3 about the other 2. 3 of them have told me they have students in their class who identify as a cat. One of the teachers said that he refuses to address the cat by cat name, but addresses a student by the name on the books, by the birth name. And because he did that, the student complained to the to the parent, who went to the teachers, who went to the superintendent. The teacher got pulled into a meeting and his job was threatened because he was not identifying the student in the way the student identifies. That's wrong. That's a problem. And that's getting in the way of education of my kid and your kid. Love to hear your thoughts, your opinion. That's mine. Strong opinion. It's just common sense opinion on current events. I'm spot on. That's common sense. I don't care if you're a boy or a girl. I don't care what you're born as, a boy or girl. I don't care if you think you're a cat or a dog or a horse. I don't care. Identity doesn't matter. What matters to me is, are you getting a damned education? Are we teaching you to operate in our country as an adult? Are we helping you get to college if that's your goal? Are we helping you get into the trades if that's your goal? Because guess what? You get out of school and go to work, they don't give a rat's you know what. If you are a cat, a dog, or whatever, you get fired. That's my job as a parent. Teach you to be an adult. That's the job. That's the goal. Eric from McKinney, thanks for holding on through the news break. What's your opinion on this?
Well, the problem is too much money, not a shortage of money. What all these school districts have done, I've watched this for over many years. My kids are grown and gone now, but is that they keep demanding more and more money, and then what do? They hire hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of administrators. These school districts are absolutely bloated. This is true in higher education, too. Bloated with administrators. What do these administrators do all day? They dream up leftist ideology agendas, which they then impose on the classroom teachers and force them to comply with teaching these students, indoctrinating these students with all this leftist crap. Now, the election thing is also a problem. I'm in McKinney in Collin County, a red county supposedly. They hold the elections intentionally, not in November when everyone goes to vote. They hold the school board elections in like May, and a teeny tiny number of registered voters. I mean, like less than 10,000 voters.
Come out and vote.
Come out and vote in these school board elections, and by a teeny tiny majority, these leftist school board candidates get elected, and they come in, and as leftists, they hire leftists, and they hire more bloat, more bureaucratic bloat, because, hey, I've got 100 employees instead of 75. I'm bigger and better than you. And so the problem is too much money. Now, in McKinney specifically, not long after I moved up here, the voters, again, in one of these non-November elections, voted $85 million to build a monument to stupidity called the McKinney football stadium. Okay. Now it's 85 because Allen, the next town south of us, Allen built a $60 million stadium. So of course we had to top that with $85 million.
Keep up with the Joneses, baby.
Now, what was never discussed is the operating expenses to keep this facility, which I drive by it almost every day. It might be used, I don't know, 20 nights a year, $85 million capital investment. It's used like 20 nights a year. Maybe they have some practices there. I never see anything in the parking lot except about 20 nights a year during football season. But they never talked about the operating expenses and the budgeting for the operating expenses to maintain this giant $85 million monument to stupidity. So I don't want to hear another word about lack of money in McKinney or Collin County. The problem is the voters are not involved. This is partly intentional by having these off November elections that no one knows about or pays attention to. They don't get really advertised very much. And so the parents who are out trying to make a living and put food on the table aren't paying attention, aren't engaged. And these leftist school board members keep getting reelected or elected. And I don't. The first thing we got to do is got to get these school board elections to happen in November when everyone's voting.
Well, we got to get people engaged in voting whenever it is, right, Eric? That's
right.
the key.
That's
Eric,
right.
I gotta hit a break. On the other side of that, I want to continue some phone calls. Eric, thanks for your passion. Thanks for that, because I got to tell you, this is what we need. Chad, who's a trustee up McKinney, said exactly that. The voters need to engage. They need to be a part of the solution. I asked him how to do it. He gave us a roadmap. He told us, and you're reiterating what he said. So thank you very much. By the way, he said the number one problem is administrators and management. Not administrators, but management. And it reiterates what you said. And it's a real problem, not just in McKinney, but it's a problem in Richardson and Cameron and Grapevine and every community across this country that's really challenged with funding of school systems. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. On the other side of this, I see my phone lines. Got one open phone line if you want to weigh in at 800-288-9227. You can also hit me up with a message across social media at Westside Jeff. Back in 3 minutes with your calls. I'm Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock tonight. We're talking about education. I saw a story earlier this week in the Dallas News about school systems here in North Texas that are making some tough decisions. It highlighted Lewisville as the latest district to close schools because of tight budgets. Said that they followed the lead of Richardson, Plano, Capel, and Irving. Several things that are impacting school systems right now here in our community, but also across the country. One of them here is that the legislature has not increased the base per student amount it gives to districts since 2019. Meanwhile, something I didn't know until I read up on it here, but it also like this across the country. Federal pandemic aid that funneled billions of dollars to public schools is expiring while inflation made everything from fuel to insurance more expensive. So they're challenged. Boards are challenged with operating schools. We have a challenge. In the meantime, some parents don't feel they're getting bang for the buck, and they're moving from one district to another to get their kids out of a bad district into what they perceive a big district, or they're putting them into private schools. Hence, the story in the Dallas News showed almost 500,000 students, 10% of the population in schooling or so, is in private schools, private or homeschooling. When I went to school, that number wasn't even like that. That was homeschooling and private schools represented a fraction of probably 1%. Population migration is part of the challenge. Funding is part of the problem. Population declining birth rates is an issue. Stagnant state funding is a challenge. Expiring pandemic aid certainly is a big thing. There are a lot of things impacting schools and education. Just a minute ago, we took a call from a listener who identified himself as Chad. He's a trustee in McKinney, and he said that it is a problem. And he gave us some insight. And he said the biggest problems that he sees from a trustee perspective, number one problem is management at the top within the school systems. And number two is a woke agenda, not educating. It's putting words in his mouth. It's indoctrination, not education, is what's going on in many schools. And number three, he said upper management, protecting their turf at the expense of student education. And he had some powerful things to say. I appreciate him doing it. So I ask you heard some of that. You heard the thoughts. You see the challenge. You're paying a lot of money to live in the community you live in to fund the school system in which you live in. What's your perspective? My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can hit me up across social media or call me like Lynn has from Richardson at 1-800-288-9227. Lynn, thanks for holding on. What's your opinion on this?
I think this is a fabulous subject. I'm glad that we're starting to say things that no one wishes to say out loud. I want to give my appreciation and blessings to Chad. It was definitely powerful, the gentleman, and I echo everything he said. The gentleman from McKinney mentioning about there's already too much money in Collin County. I've moved from the upper Midwest and upper Michigan. I live in the Montana area. I also lived in the Ohio and Indiana area. And this is happening definitely nationwide, unfortunately. It is my purview, and I think many will echo that the bigger pictures, our nation, unfortunately, was invaded. And it was meant to be broken down. These administrators and whatnot, these superintendents, are getting paid extremely well. Before I moved here, and I live in Richardson, I've only been here for about 3 years. And I was shocked to see my tax bill just for Plano Independent School District was $1,726. Just for Plano Independent School District, and a portion of my bill, I am paying over $7,800 in that portion alone. And let me tell you, we do not have a fancy home. We do not have a full acre. We do not have that, okay? And I think it's absolutely appalling and insult. There's people that wish to retire that may not have a $3 to $5 million parachute, that wish to remain. There's something to be said about stability in the community. And this is something that's not being promoted. Let me say this, the steam would be a little bit less if I knew that the future generation of leaders are someone I can trust. But with this sort of ideology, mindset, paradigm, program, whatever word you want to use, this is some ideology that you cannot trust in. How can I trust in something that is trying to convince, our grandchildren, our little granddaughter that, no, you are not a girl, you are a boy. And when they come home, do not listen to your parents. Your parents do not know, and cause a schism that is so harsh and so raw. And every time that child comes home, it's a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, and to break up the family. This goes back.
Hey, Lynn, I've got to hit a news break. Can I have my producer put you on hold because I want to finish this conversation? Can you sit tight for a minute through the news as I want to come back to that? Are you okay with that? And by the way, on the other side of this, Lynn, something you just said I think is very, very important. For those parents who have kids in the school system, you may or may not know what she's talking about, but for parents that don't, if you think Lynn is making this up, you're wrong. Lynn is not making it up when she says that there are administrators. I've heard this from 3 independent teachers that don't know each other, don't know I talk to them, who the administrators have said exactly what she said. Don't listen to your parents at home. If you want to identify as a cat, if you want to identify as a dog, if you want to identify as a different gender, it's okay. You can do that. And we will help you, allow you to do that in our school system. I've heard that from 3 independent teachers. That's not just one-offs, and that's not hyperbole. It's real. It's not happening all the time, everywhere, every student. But by God, it's real. We'll talk about it on the other side of the news. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. In for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So earlier today, the White House called Joe Biden's announcement the largest single day of clemency for any president in modern U.S. history, a record that excludes such categorical actions as President Carter's blanket pardon for all Vietnam War deserters. Big story today that Joe Biden, the president, is commuting the sentences of around 1,500 people while he considers more clemency actions before he leaves office, including possible preemptive pardons of officials who have clashed with President-elect Donald Trump. Do you remember when Joe Biden ran for office? He said he was campaigning on being the most transparent president ever. Listen, here, my thought on the actions of today really tie back to the talk we're having tonight about education. Actions carry consequences. Your actions have consequences. And that's what we're talking about within our schools. Talking about a story I saw earlier this week in the Dallas News that schools across our area in North Texas, but also across the country, are challenged with making their budgets work. And the story, the Dallas News did a really good story, a good job in the story. It started off saying Texas school finances are stretched. Lewisville is the latest district to close schools because of a tight budget. The trustees voted Monday to shutter 5 elementary schools. And Lewisville followed the lead of Richardson, Plano, Capel, and Irving ISDs. Took call just a little while ago from a gentleman who's a trustee in McKinney who shed some light on it, and that elicited several more phone calls. One of them is Lynn from Richardson. Lynn, thank you for holding on through the break. You had some really, really good points. And one of them you ended with when I said, I got to hit a break to cover the news on the other side of that. I want you to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Lynn, the one thing that parents, I know so many parents have this conversation that think when they hear a radio talk show guy talk about a kid identifying as a cat or a dog and teachers getting in trouble for not addressing the student for how they identify, that they think, parents think, I'm overreacting, I'm blowing it up, that's hyperbole, that's exaggerating. That's not exaggerating. You started to talk about it. Continue what you were saying.
Not an exaggeration at all. Again, this is a very sophisticated operation. I wish I can go into further what my occupation's been for more than several decades, but I cannot. I'll just say I have high clearance. But that all being said is that this is truly, when they say it's PSYOP for, it really is breaking down any type of impression that would be, let's say, level-headed, good common sense, listen to your mom and dad, 1, 2, 3, take away history, take away the United States culture, take away the family culture, you're going to have a breakdown. So when the child comes home and holds back information that they might be taking gender-affirming drugs and whatnot, or whatever that may be look like, the parents are typically in the dark. And by the time they find out and discover this, okay, a lot of harm has been done that's irreversible. So I say to debrief your child every single day. Get very cozy. Ask everything. What did you eat? How many times you tie your shoe? Whatever that is, to protect their minds and protect the onslaught that's happening to them. The future generations, the leaders, is at threat. Look at our public school system. It's completely broken down. There's no respect. And also, I was shocked to learn in parts of Texas, because they can't find good teachers that want to put up a very toxic environment, where there's teachers now that don't have the education and don't even have the, I can't even say it, don't even have the degree to teach. Are you kidding me? So there's that. The gentleman before me that had said about there is, too much money. He's right. Absolutely. The pensions are extraordinary of what we're paying with the pensions or medical. For what? You are supporting the actual breakdown of our nation. This is coming from the top. These teachers and superintendents just didn't make this up. This is coming from our local leaders, our state legislation, Texas Supreme Court, whatever you want to call it. It is, and ultimately it's coming from the very tippy top, which is what? In this case, I can speak factual. Right now, we're in the middle of the Biden administration. Look at what has occurred in 4 years. In a lot of ways, it's a blessing because it showed people what's been really happening, and please wake up. I ended up being a poll worker this election because I wanted to see how Texas was running things. Unfortunately, I've been in environments where, let me tell you, things mysteriously or erroneously reported and not properly so, or there's a lot of mechanical mistakes or this or that. That's all very true. So I wanted to see how the election went, and I can say emphatically on the precincts that I've seen that Collin County is just at its class. They run it at a tight operation, was fair, and it was perfect. And that was really refreshing. For the first time, I really felt that my vote counted, and I felt I was actually in a county that held integrity as the main principle of what we as Americans and the family of veterans that we fought for. But when you break down our future generations, then who do I trust and who do I have hope for that would carry me, if you will, over the threshold when my time comes to retire? We don't have it. And that was the whole point of breaking down the United States as a superpower. This is just a grain, if you will, of the bigger picture. And people don't want to hear that. And I understand that's difficult to hear. But here we are. And Chad, he's right. Have a little grit. Have a little upspa. Speak up. Do not be silent. Do not be meek.
Challenge the educational system.
Yes, sir. That's right. Because remember, they call the parents. Did they do that? Sure. That's not made up.
Lynn, I gotta go. I appreciate your call. You had some really good points. I got to hit a quick break, and our phone lines are full. I want to get to as many callers as I can. We're talking about education and the challenges. The challenges that we're dealing with are real and need to be addressed, and not just in McKinney or Richardson, but also Cameron, Temple, Frisco, Grapevine, Plano, you name it. It's going on across our community, and it's real challenging. You got to be involved. 800-288-9227 is the number. You can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. 3 minutes, we'll continue with your calls on the Chris Crock Show. My name is Jeff, Westside Jeff, on News Talk 820 and FM 93.3 WBAP. Saw a story earlier this week in the Dallas News about the strain on Texas school budgets. It's not just in Texas, it's across the country. Jeff is the name, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock. We've taken several calls about this, about the education system. My opinion on education comes down to something very simple, and that is our educational system is broken. And I say it's time to blow it up and start over. Get in a big old room with parents and leaders in the community. Put it up on the whiteboard on what we should be addressing in schools, what we should be doing to teach in schools, not only K-12 schools, but also colleges, and build a curriculum. We need to blow it up and start over, because today our students are being over-medicated, they're being undereducated, and they are being indoctrinated. And those are three things that are not good for school systems. We need to fix it. That's my opinion. I want to hear yours. 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP is the number. You can call me like Kyle has from McKinney. Kyle, thanks for holding. You've been on hold for a while. I appreciate your patience. What's your opinion, Kyle?
Thanks, Jeff. Well, just give you a quick background. I spent 30 years of my career working for two districts in North Texas. On the construction side, I was in the construction department, so I know where all the money can be wasted. Retired back in 2016, got into politics and activism for children. And I live in McKinney. I can echo everything Chad says, but I want to take it a step further. We have no structure with students in school. We let them come to school in their pajamas and their slippers. We let them drink and we let them eat in class. We let them put their feet up on the desk. We indoctrinate them with pornography and books. We try to hide it from the citizens. There are just so many issues going on in the schools. My wife is actually a sub in a North Texas district, sees this on a daily basis. They're disrespectful to the teachers. And we do have a lot of good teachers, but they're afraid to speak up in lieu of losing their job. But, you know, the other, and Chad kind of touched on this, I speak at meetings in McKinney, Prosper, Plano. I've spoken in Grayson County districts. And the same pattern is we're lucky if we have 15 to 20 people show up to a meeting. And I, for one, preach about this every day on my Twitter page, on my Facebook page. And it's just not, people think if it doesn't affect them, why should we get involved? Or they're afraid of being retaliated against. the only way to get information out of the district is to do a FOIA request. That's where we have to go to get all this information. And we also need to start going after the school board members' bonds. A lot of people don't know they're bonded, and they're basically shielded with, for the lack of better terms, immunity from being held accountable for anything they do or don't do. So there's so many different issues, and the wokeism in these schools, the indoctrination, I've never seen it so bad. And I was in the education field for over 30 years, and it's just absolutely horrible how bad it's gotten. And it's, people need to start paying attention to the State Board of Education. There's 15 State Board of Education members across the state of Texas. Most people don't even know that board exists. If they do, they don't know who their member is. We have to get involved, getting the TEA out of here, getting TASB out of here. And for those that don't know, the State Board of Education sets the curriculum standards. That board is made up of 15 members, like I said. Why are we not putting the heat on the State Board of Education to get this woke indoctrination material out of our schools?
Well, we need to. Right, Kyle? We
Absolutely.
need to. Kyle, thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion on that. I want to get to some other callers. Mike from Frisco, thanks for holding on. You're on the Chris Crock Show with Westside Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Westside Jeff, for having me on.
You're welcome, man. Give me your take. Give me your opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to give you kind of more, maybe a business side opinion to a lot of what's happening here. I've, in my 40-year career in business, I've worked both in the private sector and the public sector. And I think a lot of what's happening here is incompetence. There are a lot of people that are in charge, and in the case, and it isn't just the school systems, but in this case, we're talking about the school system. There are a lot of teachers that are incompetent. And what I've learned in my 40-year career is when you aren't able to actually teach or do A, B, and C, what you do is X, Y, and Z. And we have a lot of incompetent teachers that can't teach reading, writing, or arithmetic. So what do? They teach woke ideology, they teach transgender stuff, and they teach all this other stuff. And they kind of use that as a way when they don't have to teach the real things that make, that educate kids. And then there's a lot of groupthink. And I've seen this where, the teachers are sitting there in their teacher's, studio, and they're like, did you teach anyone any math today? No, but I taught kids how they may not be the gender that they thought they were. And this kind of permeates the whole system where they don't really have to actually be competent in what they're doing. They just have to deal with, the other things where they don't have to be competent in.
Mike, you're right. Mike, I get to interrupt. You're right on that. I want to try to squeeze in another call. I appreciate your thought and your opinion on that. I want to see if I can squeeze in one more quick call, 45 seconds or so, because I get hit top of the hour news break with Mac from Allen. Mac, thanks for holding. I want to get to you before I get to the news.
Oh, that's great. My comment's really quick. I agree with what everybody is saying, but here's an idea. Instead of going with Lynn when she mentioned about the pensions, I would say start with a 401k like every other employee. You invest in your 401k, the company will match it, and then you have a stock option. And the stock options is predicated based on performance. And that will do away the pensions. Every other employee do that. They don't have pensions, so that will save a lot of money. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Mac. I appreciate that's an interesting idea. I got to process that one. Thank you very much for your call, and thanks for being part of the show. Name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. On the other side of this top of the hour news break, I want to talk a little bit about Trump today at the New York Stock Exchange and why that's important and how that impacts things. Boys to Men are coming to Lucas Oil Live, a WinStar World Casino and Resort, on April 19th. Now, for more information and for tickets, you can go to winstar.com and get your tickets. But you can also potentially win a pair of tickets. Text the word ROAD, R-O-A-D, ROAD, to 1-800-288-9227 for your chance to win a pair of tickets. That's ROAD, R-O-A-D, to 1-800-288-9227. Top of the hour news in 2 minutes. On the other side of that, we'll continue conversation about the New York Stock Exchange, what Trump did today, and why that's important optically. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.